Hello, Residency 3 students. Welcome to the Handbooks Checklists and APA lesson webinar discussion. Well, I'm discussing. I'm talking. As with all of these videos, if you have questions, please write them down and bring them to the residencies with you. What this video is basically going to do is cover some of the things that you're going to need to know where to find, because you're not going to remember everything from the residency. So it's important that you understand that there are references that you can use to find the information you need. CityU has two handbooks that we use for our students. We have the Dissertation Handbook, which is for both the EDD and the DBA program. And then we have the Doctoral Handbook. The Doctoral Handbook is either EDD version or the DBA version. The Doctoral Handbook you should have gotten at the beginning of the program. The Dissertation Handbook you will get during residency. Both of these books are reviewed once a year, and sometimes they're updated, sometimes not. But we always want to make sure that you have the most recent copy. We will be putting these into the dissertation shells, so you'll be able to find them there. And if you ever need a copy, you can always contact your program director to get the most recent copy of the handbook. One of the things the Dissertation Handbook contains in it that you're going to be using during the time where you are working on your dissertation are checklists. And the checklists go over what is expected at each stage of the prospectus, the proposal, and the final dissertation. And it really is a list of things to check off to make sure you have those covered. It's not exhaustive, but it will cover most of what you need to know. The Dissertation Handbook will also have some formatting, stylistic, and other things that you need to know for the dissertation. So this is what the current book looks like, the Dissertation Handbook. It really is important that you access it, use it, understand it, and then when you get to the point that you're checking things off, you find the checklists that are in the back. Now, this is the checklist for the final dissertation, and basically what you'll see is it goes through kind of the important things that you need to know, like what's going to be in the abstract, what's going to be in the introduction, what's the study background, what's the problem statement, what's the purpose statement. You also look at the research questions, limitations. This is the format of Chapter 1. Then you get into Chapter 2, and it tells you what it should be in Chapter 2. Again, you're not just going to have the headings that are here, but you will need to have these headings. So for Chapter 1, you will need to have a heading that says research questions. You will need to have a heading that says limitations. We'll have a key terms heading. In the literature review, you're probably going to have a lot more headings that you're going to have to create yourself. That's what's really important here. But headings need to be used strategically, and that's more of an APA issue, but you will need to make sure that you know how to use styles on your computer, on your Word document. Don't depend on an APA template to hold everything together for you. It's not going to work. The templates are too easy to break as you're changing things, as you're making different changes. Learn how to use the styles. You will have each heading will have a style to it. You're going to need to create a style for the chapter headings, because that's not included in the typical styles area of Word. So what you're going to do is you're going to go in and you're going to copy the heading number 1, and you're going to change the name to to chapters. And then you'll set the parameters for what a chapter heading is. And then you'll have heading 1, which is the middle bold. Then you'll have heading 2, which is left justified and bold. Heading 3 is when it's indented and begins at the ends with a period, and it's also bold. Those are going to be the most of the headings that you're going to use. It's very rare that you get down to a level 4 heading, so just keep that in mind. It's really important to guide your reader through. Looking at the headings should be a great outline for the reader about what you're going to discuss. Chapter 3 is the methodology chapter, as you know. Again, these are just the general categories that we're going to want to see in the document and what should be under those categories. 4 and 5, the findings, the conclusions, and discussion. Again, gives you a little bit of what's going on, how you want to tie these chapters together. What do you want to have in them? Typically, chapter 4 is just a presentation of the findings. So these are going to be where you're going to put participant quotes or statistical data. It's just the facts, none of your interpretation. You don't really tie it back to the literature. You're just presenting the what you found. And in the qualitative sense, you'd be presenting your themes here. When you get to chapter 5, that's when you discuss what was in chapter 4 and connect it to chapter 2. So chapter 5 is a combination of 4 and 2. Why is what you found important? How does it connect to previous literature and other things? There's also going to be a little bit about style organization here. This is just a reminder to check these things off, but you do want to check them. Again, this is a really kind of before you send it to your chair, you should check these things. Before your chair sends it to the dissertation director, they should check these things. Again, it's one of those situations where you want to make sure that you're on the right path. Little cartoon here. Many of you know that I'm a huge fan of the PhD comics. They're very funny. But basically, this is the difference between landing on the moon and getting a degree, a doctoral degree. One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind, as opposed to one giant leap for one person and a tiny insignificant step for mankind. And that's, part of the dissertation culture that you're going to learn, is that this is a really important project for you. It really is. It's something that you are going to be working on. It's going to take a lot of energy. It's going to take a lot of time. It's going to distract you from some things in your life. You're going to have to make sacrifices. It's going to be a big deal for you. For the academic world, it's not. I often say in the residencies, it's going to probably be 5 people that read your dissertation, and 3 of them are on your committee. And one of them is probably going to be your mother, but maybe. My mother didn't read mine. So it's important to know that what happens after the dissertation is what makes your academic mark. You publish academic articles from your dissertation. That's part of the dissemination that you learned about in the other video. That is where you start to get currency in your field. But the dissertation itself really is just a small drop in the bucket of academia. And that's the way you need to think about it. A big thing for you and a little thing for the rest of the world. But that's okay, because it's a big deal for you, and it's what makes you a doctor. So remember that. Now, I'm going to talk to you about a few CityU exceptions to the APA manual, but one thing I want you to do is make sure you go out and get an APA manual. You want to own a hard copy. Do not electronic or websites are not good enough. You need the hard copy, and let me tell you why. Because you should be hand doing your citations and references. Don't rely on automatic systems to do it. It's not good. They break, they cause problems, they cause issues in the coding. They can be just a mess to deal with. You should take I'm doing a lot of shoulds. It would be good if you took tabs and little stick-on tabs and put tabs in every place in the APA manual that you are using. If you use it once or twice, the second time you use it, put a tab there. You will find yourself going back to those tabs over and over again, and it's really good. When you're formatting a table, it's very strict how to format a table. When you're inserting a figure, it's very strict on how you insert a figure. So you want to understand that. So let's talk a little bit about some of the exceptions that we have because you're doing a dissertation. One of the things the APA does allow is the use of personal pronouns. They don't want you to use the author or the researcher. We at CityU are very strict about using third person, which isn't always the best when you're doing qualitative research, but it's the style here at CityU, and so for now, you just need to accept that that is the style to use. Um, Make sure that you don't use I, you don't use we. Also, don't try to genderize your words. Try to be gender neutral as much as possible. It's really good to not be bringing gender or first person anything into this thing. So you're going to be writing in third person, but you also don't want to use the researcher or the author. You want to avoid that, and you're going to have to avoid that by using passive voice. You're going to want to avoid passive voice if you can, but honestly, you're not going to be able to. It's better to use passive voice than to use the researcher or the author. You want to make sure that you also get rid of what we call fluff. Words that get stuck in to writing, often because it makes the writing a little bit more descriptive, or it puts in words like very and really. I use those all the time, and it's really hard for me to stop. But it's not supposed to be used in academic writing, because it again is fluff words. It's also, you don't want to use words like absolute and never. These really big words there's no place for that in research. You always want to be a little tentative. Sometimes, most of the time, is much better to use than always. So you want to be key to these words. There's more words that you want to pay attention to that will be in your style guide that you'll get as well. The other thing is quotations. CityU does not want you to use quotations, and this is again a stylistic version of academic writing that CityU has for its dissertations. You should not have more than 1% of quoted material in your work. So quotes must be very important. Don't quote something that you can paraphrase or that you can rephrase. However, your participants' words, if you're doing qualitative research, will be used as quotes, but you want to use them as block quotes whenever possible, so 50 words or more, because you're really adding description to the themes that you've created. Make sure that you use pseudonyms or numbers not pseudonyms instead of numbers for your participants. It's very confusing for the reader to call a participant by a number. Number 4 said, number 3 said, use their fake name. I always let my participants choose their fake name. That's their pseudonym, so use that. Make sure that if you are using 2 quotes in the same paragraph, that you're very clear on who's saying what. If you're putting 2 block quotes together, one after the other, you're probably going to need to put the name of the person at the beginning of it. Okay, that is all I had for this short video. If you have any questions, concerns, ideas, write them down. There'll be plenty of time to talk about them during residency. I look forward to seeing you all and hearing from you all in a few weeks.